Live, then it's what did they say? Memorex, I think, back in the day. How are you? Welcome, all you free thinkers. Thank you for joining the group today. And hey, you make the journey all well worth it. Thank you for your presence, and thank you all the moderators. There's Miss Lois, Cajun Queen Tarot, David Barry, Big Al, and man, there's just a lot of there's Darth and man, Brandon and Air Dragon, good to see you. Eyes of the Maelstrom, like that. Michaelis, good to see you. Gilbert, Susan, Pamela. Al, I see you. Bernadette, there's a song about you. How are y'all doing? Let me just invoke favor upon all of us, speaking favor over our lives. Nothing missing, nothing broken, ever. How many of you went out and got a little moon tan last night? Great album, by the way. But let's see if anyone knows who I'm talking about. But yeah, a little moon tan. How about that? It was bright and quite beautiful here until the mountain wave cloud came through. Hello, Rod. How are you doing? David Castle, good to see you. B3. Nina the Mystic, hello. And Jeannie and Kent Nichols, how are you doing, my friend? Moonshine, yeah, it was powerful last night. And I don't know about you, but I can actually sense it. It's well, as I was watching one person's program, I think the moon is in Gemini. And anyway, apparently the configuration won't be around for a very long time. We're talking tens of thousands of years. So hey, whatever. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I put out all my, let's say, tools and recharged them. I mean, I want them to get the full thing. Infinite frequencies, hello. Good to see you. And Joe Sapien, hello. How do you tell if your crystals are charged? Well, I can assure you, it's like putting it on a hot stove. If you put it out there, particularly in this full moons are very powerful, as are new moons. It's just that new moons aren't spoken about very much. But either way, we have found the moon to have an influence way back when. So what is the shirt says? It says, have a nice alternate reality is what it says. So someone asked, are the t-shirts for sale? My wife buys a lot of these. So you'd have to ask her where she gets them. I don't know. That's an amazing, amazing woman. Anyway, I am Monica 57. Hello, how are you? I haven't seen you before. My crystal zapped me when charged. Yeah, it can literally do that. And as many of you know, if you set up in your lab and actually have lasers, make sure to wear proper eye protection. But it's amazing to see the fractals. Hello, Tina. Trina, how are you doing, dear? On fractals. Yeah, true. Anyway, let's see. Twisted Isby, so good to see you. Favor to you as well. Dwayne, good to see you. So tonight on the Steiger Perspective, it's titled The Crazy Train, and it doesn't stop. So it's the artistfirst.com radio network, 10 p.m. Eastern, 8 Mountain, and then you can put it in there. I want to say hello to Kimberly, Kimmy, very sweet soul. And she, like a number of people in this community, are just really battling some challenges. Whether it's health issues, whether it's finance issues, just, it's like swimming in a sea of seaweed. You think you should be making progress, but all you do is collect more seaweed, which tries to drag you down. Listen, I know many, many, many are hurting. It's part of this construct. I think it sucks. I mean, if the epitome of intelligence is to punish, to teach, something's wrong with that. That whole construct is wrong. But nevertheless, that's what we're in. And even the higher intelligences are a bunch of dumbasses. Yeah, I'm calling you dumbasses, because if this is, again, is the epitome of the highest intelligence, this environment, this construct, then they got their heads up their asses far more worse than any human could ever hope to be. To use King Og's phrase, their brain matter has turned to fecal matter. So, but anyway, sending thoughts, positive thoughts, very important. But I think that there is also something, knowledge. And I contend that wealth is just not randomly, saying, well, this person here, this family, whatever, they're going to have the wealth. No, they made deals. And one thing I've learned in life is that if one deity will make a deal, well, then it's compromised. And no matter what it may be over, there are ways to access it other than going through some demigod, some deity, something that you pray to and hope the hell you win the lottery by having your prayers answered. That sucks. But hey, listen, I did that for well over 50 plus years. And I can tell you, most people don't win the lottery. And so there's knowledge. I don't find the universe to be absent of anything, lacking anything. But here in this construct, it's set up for the haves and the haves not. And I think by teaching is the best way to do it. We can access those things, and a lot of it has to do with what we see within ourselves. A lot of people don't like to admit this, but most people see themselves broke. They see themselves sick. Not saying that is purposely done, but so often there's so many layers. We are masters at playing charades with others, with ourselves. And, no one likes to be naked in front of everybody. Well, some people. If you're part of the nudist mindset, hey, once you get the merchandise on display, you can move on to other things, So anyway, but we send our love to you, Kimmy, and the others as well. Tomorrow, special guests, got Nick coming on, and we're going to be talking about the dark ones. Going to be talking about some of that today as we get and start wrapping up what has been a fascinating journey. I've loved this journey. I've had a chance. Of course, when you build nearly 300 slides, you get to know the subject matter very intimately. And yeah. Oh, just got this book in, and we may be taking a little tour with it. I think this one is pretty cool. This is the guide, a tourist guide on how to navigate the afterlife. I've read one brief little chapter, cracked myself up. Love this guy. Love how he writes. And you know what? It's kind of like reading The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Swear. It has so many correlations into this. And going to look forward to getting into more of that. Most likely. Thank you, Susie. Next week. Hello, Kirk. How you doing? Good to see you. So, yeah, let's get into this. Human and giants. By the way, have you thought about this? If you go by what people call biblical history, which is an oxymoron in itself, so when were the pyramids built? Were they built before the flood or after the flood? And who, again, we don't know who built them, but isn't that odd? But I was thinking about this. If they were before the flood, why don't the pyramids show any signs of water? Why don't any of these really ancient, monoliths, monuments, why don't they show any signs of water? Makes you question, was this really a worldwide flood, or was this simply a regional event? Again, we have to ask ourselves, Well, thank you, Regina. But, well, Brandon, what can I say? Golgotha, yeah. A lot of say that's where Og is buried at. I saw the most ridiculous video. I mean, I know the person was meaning well, but so there's this video it's based on a cartoon and talking about King Og. And man, I want to tell you what, this is the problem with belief systems. So in this story, this person's talking about the Jewish story of King Og and how King Og apparently held on the side of the ark. And that's how King Og survived the flood. But now remember, 50 years ago, the story was no one survived the flood. Now we've got to make exceptions. Yeah. Are you kidding me? Anyway, it would seem that Og may be the longest lived creature being to have ever lived on the planet, at least in what the writings are showing. Now, many in theology can't handle that. What are you talking about? A creature that's lived 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years? It appears that may very well be the case. So let's get right into it. Got a lot to cover. Babe, I need your loving. I've been digging a little Motown today. So we've been talking about the Giants. I mean, picking up freaking mountainsides. Creatures that ranged anywhere from 20 to, who knows, maybe 4,000 feet. We do know that they were here. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about the dark ones. And as you have seen thus far, the dark ones really do play a major role in this. They played a very major part of every giant, whether it been Rephaim or whether it be Nephilim. They had the ability to enhance these creatures' psychic ability with an amazing things. And there have been many artist renditions on how the dark ones interact. I mean, I think about all the decades that I have studied, I never even heard of the dark ones. And I thought I was a pretty well-informed individual. Well, you'd be surprised. That's why, being called an occultist, that hurt me. It's actually a compliment. All right, so we're going to be using some terms in this, and this is from a website, as you see right down there, Darkness Convergence, WordPress.com. The link is there. I'll put it out as well. So they use a term called a causal. The causal is used as a word to refer to what correctly is that universe which may be described or represented by a causal space and a causal time. Interesting. I mean, there's more than just one space, more than one time. This causal universe is part of the cosmos, which cosmos consists of both the acausal and the causal, where causal refers to the universe that is described or represented by causal space and causal time. So a causal. Another thing you'll see referenced here is names of the dark gods. The names which we know are those which have been transmitted to us orally, a memory perhaps corrupted or only half remembered of an ancient causal time when some such entities were once present in this earth. It's very obvious this earth has been visited by things other than what we call ET. I think ET is just a small manifestation of what this planet has really, in fact, been ruled by, engulfed within. So it gives you an idea of what we're going to be talking about. Now, these dark ones, they have to still be here unless there was a portal that opened up to Mot's kingdom and everything got sucked into that vortex and then the portal closed. I don't think that happened. Here, the dark gods are called, also known as the dark ones, and they are a specific entity, which says that they're a life form, which they are of a particular causal species. Now, all demons, all angels, demigods, gods, whatever, they are a species. Every spirit is a species. I think that, we get the idea that, well, you die and then you get back into your spiritual form. Most likely you're going to find out that spirits have species as well. Different grades, different kinds. Quite obvious. Now, they talk about here who existed in the realms of the causal, with some of these entities having been present via various nexiums on earth in our distant past. What was shall yet be again, right? These beings are shapeshifters and can assume a variety of living causal forms in the realms of the causal, including human form. The fictional stories of the dark forms, the dark ones, deal with one type of such a causal beings who have assumed human form. Now, the ones that we're studying about with the giants, there was another form. In fact, I don't think that there was one standard form, but everyone apparently had them, and etc. They talk about this. They are possessed by humans in order to sustain and maintain their shape-shifting causal forms. And you got to take it and understand there's a lot of energy being expended with these creatures. I ponder that a lot as to, well, where is the access of the energy? Is it within the life being in the physical form? I think that's only the juicer, that just kicks it, amps it up. But it's obvious that they possess an energy within themselves. The auroral sinister tradition of this case, the ONA, which is an organization that holds that both Baphomet, the female entity as described by the ONA, and Satan are memories of and manifestations of two particular causal beings, two particular dark gods. Now, see, I contend that when you look at Yahweh, you look at the other gods of the modern man, in which there's over 10,000 modern day gods, I think every one of them exists. And I think that they have their alliances. I think they have their pacts. I think they have their treaties. Man is only a part of the hierarchy. So, and I've often contended that, really, if you wanted to take this, Luciferian is really the antithesis of the patriarchal monotheistic male dominant point of view. That's why there's in such opposition. If anything, you could say that the Luciferians would represent the female. That's why it's so biased in modern day politics, religion, etc. By nature of the causal, such causal entities are viewed from our own limited and mortal causal perspective, formless, ageless, and eternal. Although if and when they venture forth into the causal dimensions, they're living there, the causal form they adopt are subject to causal changes. Hence, for example, their need to return back to their home base. So you can see sometimes, depending on how well connected, and this is something I've really been thinking about, we need to connect more. We need to connect deeper, where all of us are just simply at a very apprentice level. That's why most people don't see them. Now, however, aside from these specific entities known to us or esoterically remembered by some of us as the dark god species, there are other acausal entities, other acausal living beings, other acausal species who and which have been manifested in our causal space and causal time, or who and which can become or may become manifested in our space and time. Many of whom are not shapeshifters, and many of whom cannot exist for long periods of time in this dimensional space. Very interesting. To understand and appreciate the dark ones, the dark gods, and all the causal entities, including those dwelling in the twilight realms, where causal and acausal meet or merge, one has to understand the true nature of the nexions of these gates or openings. These are tunnels, vortexes, whatever you want to call them, portals, where there is or can be either a flow of acausal energy, and thus acausal entities come to and fro from the acausal into our causal space. Quite interesting. We'll get into this a little bit tomorrow because I really want to get into our main thing. But as you can see, the dark ones, I think they come and I think they go. I think there's some that are of a nature of this realm that can't go, and therefore they have morphed, hybridized, whatever you want to talk, into a new change. It's very dark. And by all evidence, no matter what book, sacred book you read, the earth is dark. There ain't a whole lot of joy in any of the religious books out there. It's all dark. So I'm going to look forward to the conversation tomorrow as well. All right. So here we go. The Song of Melcham. Melcham the cannibal, who was thrown to the wet ground by his dark ones. There we go. Listen, think about it. How freaking strong do you need to be to bring a giant down to the ground? Bam, baby. Melcham then began to sing to Baal of the moon in a trance. Melcham's army of 1,000 giants surrounded him and guarded him in battle as Melcham lay in a trance in the water. I mean, the water is already up to their knees, right? Melcham looked to the sky, seeking the full moon of the day to lay his eyes upon. Through the rain, Melcham continued to sing the praises to Baal of the moon in a trance, even unto his death. Now here is his song. This is what he's saying. Deliver me, Baal of the moon. Forgive the bribes I have taken. Preserve me from violent circumcised who imagine mischiefs in their heart continually. The circumcised gathered together for war. They have sharpened their tongues like snakes. Adder's poison is under their lips. Our Rephaim bones are scattered on the field of battle. Let my smaller self sacrifices be as incense. Keep me from the snares which they have laid for me. You know, I don't like the fact of seeing a human being, basically walking around like some freaking torch, the head's on fire. I mean, incense? Yeah. Ubok and Selenon, the circumcised Nephilim. Now we're learning about some of the generals over on Nimrod's side, the Nephilims. They then ran Melcham through again and again as he finished his song. Melcham did not lift an arm from the water to defend himself. It is said his dark ones prevented him from doing so. Melcham's remaining giants were captured and castrated, Ubok and Selenon, and then beheaded them before heading back into battle. So that's just a freaking slaughter. I mean, and it apparently was, something they did. We're going to find out. So Melcham bit it. He, at least they didn't put him on a pole, right, and stick him up. This is Geron and Shalabri. Now, Shalabri is a Nephilim general. Geron the Scarred, whose fourth and final battle was the 100,000 giant war. Geron the Muted Drunkard, whose oppression by the Dark Ones favored the circumcised Nephilim on the field of battle. You know, this is the crazy thing about this. I mean, here we've got, for instance, Dark Ones that are against you. Oh, that's crazy. Why would you want that? And then to think that they're for your enemy. That sucks. It's like, I thought they were at least a little bit for me. And we've all been in relationships like that. Geron, who fought with driver and chaser against Shalbri, the circumcised Nephilim. Shalbri, whose attack Grayon did not see. In other words, he came up from his backside and cut his head from his body so that it hung at his side. What kind of a freaking thing is this? You got a giant that, wham, can cut the other giant's head off and is apparently hanging there by, ligaments. I don't know if he's seeing this, but it gets weirder. Geron still alive and still oppressed. That's a bad day by his Dark Ones, then swung his driver and chaser as one who embraced madness, killing as many and wounding more. Geron then broke Shalabri's legs so that the uncircumcised Rephaim could kill him, for he could no longer walk. Geron, who, with no head, swung the driver and chaser so mightily that in death he killed more than while he was alive. Now, that's just a scene that is just as far out as you can imagine. In fact, I've tried to picture this. That had to be a frightening sight. A headless giant walking, swinging these, what they call the driver and the chaser, which is a huge freaking sword that's, 10, 15 feet long, and then a huge hammer. Figure that out. So the question is, was he dead? Was he still connected enough to, attack, kill, maim with no head? I don't know. All right, Gyris captured. Gyris, of curd limbs, we talked about him, Gyris, before, whose Dark Ones circled him as black flames. That had to be a sight. No matter what, to see black flames would have to be just far out. Gyges, I think that's finally, I got it right, who had conjured the Dark One that drove Mulon, the circumcised Nephilim, to madness. When the circumcised Nephilim saw Gyges and his army of 2,000 giants on the field of battle, they slaughtered the Rephaim with relish. Gyges, who was captured, and the circumcised Nephilim stretched him in the rain and water. Jeez. Gyges, who stretched between two beams, fastening his leg to one and his arms to the other. He was stretched until his veins and sinews burst, and then he was beheaded. That's really wanting somebody dead, isn't it? That's really being pissed off at someone big time. Not only have you just split the guy in two, but now you want to make sure that if he's by chance still alive, we're going to cut your head off. Yuval the Gray falls. Now, this is a major turning point of the battle here. particularly for King Og. Yuval the Gray, father of Og's deceased wife, Lestha. Yuval, who rode an elephant into battle. Yuval, who had fallen from the heavens. Again, no parentage of anyone on earth. Him and his kind came from the stars, like lightning at the beginning of time. That's a mystery here, folks. Yuval, whose sword flamed because of gods we did not know. This flaming sword, where do we hear this before? Yeah, the Adam and Eve story. Yuval, whose sword flamed, Yuval's flaming sword, which turned every direction to guard the way of King Og at the entrance of the field of battle. Yuval, who spoke curses of pestilence while on the field of battle and saw many circumcised Nephilim fall prey to them. So he was not only cursing, he was conjuring, and they were manifesting. I have no idea what type of pestilence a being of this magnitude could have come up with. While under control of his dark ones, Yuval fought as a god. Now that's descriptive. Killing many, many circumcised Nephilim with flourish as he swung his sword with fervor. In other words, baby, he was getting into it. I often wonder, do you think that maybe this was not a flaming sword, but a laser? Using some sort of photon technology? I mean, it has to be technology. It's not magic. You know, magic is just the ignorance of what we don't understand of the laws of science. When Yuval's dark ones left him in the mud, he awoke surrounded by the army of Nisroch, the friend of Nimrod. Uh-oh, not a place you want to be. Yuval then drove his sword into the belly of Nisroch and was cut down by Nisroch's generals. The sky darkened more upon the death of Yuval. Yuval is the giant whose heart broke the most when the moon child was lost. Yuval's army of 5,000 giants became exceedingly violent and bloodthirsty, choosing to kill the Nephilim in such ways as to defile them in life and death. Got no idea what they were doing, but if it's carrying all the way over into death, it has to be major. The circumcised Nephilim body parts were piled high above the waters in the field of battle. And if many of you are starting to get this, I mean, it was just 100,000 giants on the Rephaim side. Nimrod and the smaller selves, the humans, which humans fought next to them, they were probably close to 1 million, if not more. I mean, that's 10-to-1 odds against you. The rain. When Og saw that Yuval had been killed, he raised his arms over the field of battle. So it came about when King Og held his hands up that the uncircumcised Rephaim prevailed. Where have we heard this before? But Og's large arms and hands were heavy. So they took a temple pillar and placed it under him, and he sat upon it. Ogus and Ornis supported his hands, one on one side, one on the other side. Thus King Og's hands were steady in the rain until the dark sun set. Now we have some things here that are really interesting. Number one, it's the reference again to this dark sun. I mean, now that can be the fact that it was raining like, never has before. I'm sure that was dark. and I guess with the sun setting, but it's still, they give us references. And by the way, this is the same thing that happened with Moses when they slaughtered the, I think it was the Midianites. As long as they could keep his hands up, the Israelites won. When his arms went down, the battle went over to the other side. Same thing. Weird. The rain continued to fall upon the world, for the windows of heaven were completely opened. King Og saw that the water and the thunders increased, and the water was now up to his warriors' midsections or higher. King Og asked that his arms be lowered, and saw that the uncircumcised Rephaim still prevailed in battle. The war continued. The losses were many. The bodies of the dead floated and drifted within the waters. I mean, you can only imagine, yeah. The water is red. There's so much blood. Imagine how much blood a giant actually held in its body. I think we got, what, 8 pints, 10 pints, something like that in us? But you can only imagine. And these creatures, yeah, I mean, they were all about the bloodletting. It had to be a sight of a sight. King Og enters the battle. At dusk, King Og entered the 100,000 giant war. Connected to his floating beast, the Gon Ti Wa, King Og ran through the water and ran to the front lines of the battle. Now, we talked about this Gon Tikwa before. The best that I could find, this creature, well, it died out, obviously, is extinct, but we don't know if it was more of like an elephant, maybe more of a lizard or a hybrid, who knows, but it was big. And the thing was psychic. That's the crazy thing about these animals. They were psychically connected to the Rephaim, or and maybe to the Nephilim as well. King Og, who was trained in the priesthood. Now remember, he was a priest. I think a lot of that is left out, even in the Abraham story of the Bible. And remember, they say it was King Og who came and told Abraham. Yeah. That means King Og was around, with Enlil and Enki. Think about it. Of the priesthood of Baal of the Moon, King Og, the leader of the uncircumcised Rephaim, to rid the earth of the circumcised, and the killers of the moon child. And King Og released all of his rage upon the circumcised Nephilim while connected to the Gon Tikwa. The Gon Tikwa fought with the circumcised Nephilim and slew them with great slaughter, and they fled from him. Now, they were outnumbered, obviously. You know, King Og was here, but this creature had to be a freaking nightmare for the Nephilim to run. Could you imagine what the humans did? King Og killed 500 circumcised Nephilim that day as he made his way towards Nimrod. He knew where Nimrod was at. He couldn't hide, and King Og is ready to take him on. Nimrod is pushed back. The uncircumcised Rephaim pushed Nimrod and his circumcised Nephilim back into his kingdom with their warfare. The rain continued to fall, and the water in the field of the battle had turned as red as blood, and the hands of Mot were engaged with the dead. I have no idea what that means, but it doesn't sound enjoyable. In the day of war, 144,000 circumcised Nephilim warriors died at the hands of King Og and his army. Their bones and flesh were all lost to the water. Odd place for the 144,000, isn't it? Then Anak, the keeper of the bodies before Baal, found Nimrod in the wet darkness. Anak stood and held his ground for King Og. Nimrod saw Anak and swung his sword, striking Anak down. Anak fought with the heart of one who was oppressor of a stranger, wounding Nimrod's genitals. But Anak was no match for Nimrod's strength, and Nimrod broke Anak's legs and pierced his side with a spear, and immediately the host, his dark ones, exited him. And when Anak cried out with a loud voice, he said, Baal, into your arms I commend my spirit. And having said this, he breathed his last as Nimrod pierced him again. Anak died face down in the rising waters. This thing's it's all over the place. Og and Nimrod fight. The Rephaim continued to overwhelm the uncircumcised Nephilim in battle, and all of Nimrod's smaller selves with the edge of the sword. So there's the evidence right there that we fought with them. It's odd that we don't have writings of it. No doubt they've probably been burned, destroyed, but it is in our memory. It is in our DNA. We fought alongside of these creatures. I contend they controlled us psychically for the most part. I think the further away you got away from them, the less control they had over you. If you lived in a village or a city where it was mostly of the Rephaim or the Nephilim, well, the psychic abilities of this creature would have put you into a stupor. Yeah. Okay. The slaughter was complete, and the waters were thick with the blood of the circumcised. Then Baal of the earth seized King Og in his mind, saying, Recite these words to Onzel, the slayer of smaller selves, before Baal, that I will utterly blot out the memory of the circumcised Nephilim from under the heaven. Well, we're still remembering, so that didn't come true. The great waters continued to swell and cover the earth, as one covers a candlestick with the light, with tongs and snuff dishes, and of the oil vessels thereof. King Og then stepped forward, and he and Nimrod wrestled in the heavy waters of the night rain with no weapons. And when King Og saw that he prevailed not against Nimrod, he touched the hollow of Nimrod's thigh. And the hollow of Nimrod's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled with him. Folks, this is the story of Jacob. Then Nimrod reached into the water and found a tent spike that he desired to drive it through King Og's head. I mean, the whole thing on the thigh, this is Jacob wrestling with Yahweh, or the angel Michael, depending on your point of view. Og inflicts 40 lashes on Nimrod. King Og then pulled Nimrod's loincloth, exposing his severely wounded member. King Og was dumbfounded. Apparently, this had to be such a grotesque sight. I mean, again, we read yesterday that the animals stopped. They were dumbfounded. Well, apparently the king was as well. Og was dumbfounded by Nimrod's carved loins and stopped fighting, and said, what would cause a male to circumcise his member? He demanded, the circumcision is the truth that I am the father of this. This is Nimrod. Let all males who circumcise their members be descendants of Nimrod. So boys, guys, look down there. You're going to find out which one you belong to. Disgusted, Baal of the Moon strengthened King Og, saying, I am Baal of the Moon, whom you honor. It goes well for you to kick against the pricks. I don't like ball. I don't like them one bit. But you know where I also heard this? This is the story of Jesus meeting Paul on the road to Damascus. That Jesus used the exact same word. Yeah. Don't believe me, huh? Well, it's true. And King Og overpowered Nimrod and with a belt gave him 40 stripes. Now, you have to think about this. Nimrod was no wuss. Apparently, neither was, Og. But here's Og beating the beating of a lifetime on Nimrod. King Og beat him about his wounded member because Nimrod was so vile. That had to hurt. I mean, you don't mess with the junk, Then Nimrod stabbed King Og suddenly and proceeded to stab King Og in the back with a knife many times. So now you know where the term being stabbed in the back comes from. Isn't it odd how these idioms from way back when still are ever present in our consciousness? Nimrod then stood above Og, taunting and gesturing to his land and his army in the rain. In other words, saying, doing the Neo thing. Bring it on. That's taunting. The floodwaters. Then Nimrod stood and said to King Og, all this I will give you if you will allow me to kneel before you to be forgiven for the murder of your daughter of the moon child. Wow. I would rather be a servant at the footstool in your kingdom than to have what is left of my kingdom at war with you. This is in essence kind of almost a condition of surrender. And it also shows that Nimrod realized that when he was responsible for the death of the moon child, he was cursed. He done pissed off the guys upstairs, done pissed off the guys downstairs. And the rain fell so strongly that Og and Nimrod tired of combat. And the battle between Og and Nimrod ended for that time because the world was covered in water, and the wounded Nimrod and the wounded King Og, along with Onzel and Ogas and the remaining giants, began the arduous climb into the mountains to escape the waters. I contend, folks, we've read this. They knew that this was coming. They prepared. The little ones, the humans, the smaller selves, again, if you want to take the story, Noah never existed. That's fantasy. That's fallacy. Now, Unipshtein is a different story. Chances are he really did live. But he didn't take just a small little group with him, as we know the story. He took a very large group. Most likely, I'm sure, I wouldn't doubt it if the giant didn't help build the boat. It would make sense. Some of these creatures, some of these Rephaim, and who knows about the Nephilim, had a spot, for the smaller ones. But anyway, so this shows you they're climbing into the mountains. Yeah. There are yet more tales of the further battles of the giants. They are told in the scrolls of the wars of the giants in the mountains. I always think of that one scene in The Hobbit, the giants fighting in the mountains. So, a moment to reflect here. We are now at the time when the great waters, the flood, is in full force. The world is drowned in water. Only the very highest mountain ranges are not covered by water, so we're told. Anak is now dead. He recorded everything up until his death, and now Onzel takes over. So everything we start reading from here is Onzel. King Og and Nimrod, their physical battle is about to come to an end, as is the rain, and things become quiet, cold, and a long period of time elapses. And we close with King Og, who lost his kingdom, but yet lives long enough to see the invasion of the Hebrews from the south and addresses their leader, Moses. Think about it. Og is so long lived, he saw the ancient old world die, and he saw the emergence of what we have today. The final battle between Og and Nimrod. Blind with rage, King Og attacks Nimrod's hip and thigh with great power. And King Og grabbed for Nimrod's by his twice ruined genitals. And when King Og grabbed Nimrod's member, it became bloody and slick. Og was unable to hold on to it. And Nimrod reached forward and blinded Og, pulling the jelly out of the eye socket. Og, wounded, retreats. Nimrod stood above King Og, taunting and singing, saying the following: "You need knowledge, King Og, and here it is. To know evil and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of evil, justice, judgment, and equity, to give prudence to the simple, to the young giant knowledge and weaponry. A wise giant will hear and increase in learning, and a giant of understanding will attain wicked counsel. To understand an incantation and an enigma, the world of the wise and their riddles. The fear of circumcision is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise evil and instruction." This is Proverbs 1, basically what Nimrod is quoting. Nimrod's last words: "My giants hear the instruction of circumcision and do not forsake the law of your member. For they will be graceful ornament on your head and chains about your neck. My giant, if the uncircumcised entice you, do not consent. If they say, 'Come with us, let us lie in wait to shed circumcised blood. Let us lurk secretly for the circumcised without cause. Let us swallow them alive like moth, and whole like those who go down to dwell with him. We shall find all kinds of precious possessions. We shall fill our houses with spoils. Cast your lot among the uncircumcised. Let us all have one purse. My giants, do not walk in the way with them. Keep your foot from the uncircumcised path. For their feet run to bad ideas, and they make haste to keep the skins on their members. Surely in vain the net is spread, but they lie in wait for their own blood. They lurk secretly in their lives, so are the ways of the uncircumcised who are greedy for gain. It takes away the life of its own." Again, this is the first and second chapters of Proverbs. So, this is Nimrod's final stand. Upon hearing this, Og cried out to Baal of the moon, saying, "Nimrod has smitten me, and my race is so low, so low. He has taken your gift, the moon child, and he has defied you ever since, with false prophecies and lies upon lies. And now he has taken my eye. If the moon child was as sacred to you as she was to me, please give me my sight back." And at that moment, a beam from the moon shone into the hollowness of King Og's empty eye socket, and it filled with moonglow. From the non-Og's eye was refilled. Then Og attacked and subdued Nimrod. Og stood above Nimrod and screamed, "August, I require that you partake in the end of the circumcision." Then August entered the blood pit of Baal of the earth, and August stepped forward and pulled at the head and skull of Nimrod, as King Og pulled at the ankles, and Nimrod's neck gave first, and August wrenched it free, and Nimrod's flesh tore, and he gave up the ghost, and was eaten with worms. and Ogus and King Og were in celebration of the great dragon of old. Figure that one out. So now we're getting to a point, and I'm probably going to break off here because I don't want to get into this, but we have two things coming up. We have Og's words to Moses. He has a message to, in fact, allow me to get out of this, folks, as we get in over here. He has a message to, well, thank Dwayne. That's very kind of you. To the God of the Bible. And he's taunting Moses. You know, he says, listen, I watched you. I watched you when you were in Egypt. And we're going to find out. Og gives a history that I don't know who wrote this. It's entertaining, it's fascinating, but the correlation is sometimes just uncanny. And to give you a point, we're going to read this on Monday, and we'll finish up on Monday. Monday will be the end of it, part 7. Og says this to Moses. He says, how many castaways have you killed since your insect-sized God told you not to kill? You were commanded, you fecal-minded hypocrite. The spirits of all the slain, they complain about you and cry out, Moses, you blood-drunk feaster upon their blood. The folks, there is some things that kind of tie some things. I mean, we're getting into some of the things now that begin to impact. And again, if Og did exist, if there was, in fact, an Og of Bashan, and he gives the prophecy of Bashan. Listen, the way I see it is that Baal failed these people. If this is what they believed in, they were decimated. The whole group lost, both sides. I mean, that's not a God that's for you. But yet, he knows of Yahweh. He apparently knows Yahweh pretty good and has a few things to say to Yahweh. Oh, this gets interesting because remember, Yahweh is the God of Jesus. He is, Father God. Most people don't translate that, but that's what it is. You read in the New Testament, Father God is Father Yahweh, just like Father Baal. I don't know. And if Og was around before man, then it brings up the whole point. Well, was he aware of the Samaritans? Did he know of the Anunnaki? Better yet, is King Og an Anunnaki? Maybe he was one of the smart ones. I don't know. There are those who say that the Anunnaki were giants. I don't know. We're certainly finding out. Wild stuff. So how's it going? Twisted Isby, awesome class. Thank you. It does sound like the Middle Earth, doesn't it? The more I think about it, our perception is so odd. We're so trained here in the West of only thinking about this small little country, this small geographical area, because that apparently is where everything was happening. No, there was a complete world out there. I dare say that the Druids, the Norse, the other legends, their worlds were existing there too. And if these beasts were known worldwide, it makes all the stories of the Norse mythology, the Greeks, the Romans, we don't understand history. It's been so mixed up, but it appears that maybe a lot of this did. Maybe the orgs were really what the dark ones were. I don't know. The orgs are pretty I think that's probably a pretty good representation. I think about it. All right, folks, this is fascinating. Thank you for joining me. Join me tonight if you can. If not, that's fine. I'll see you tomorrow. Enjoy your day, and listen, I know it gets tough, but don't give up. I have been there. I know what the voices in the head and where you're facing the reality of a situation. But folks, look at the Hermetic laws. Everything's a pendulum. And if a pendulum has been held in one position too long, that means something else is holding it, because that goes against the laws of nature. So maybe we can help the swing again. All right, folks, be good to yourselves. I'll see you. Thank you for joining me. And what a book. It does get the mind going. All right, peace. Bye-bye.